we sacrificed everything for you. If you're a child of an Asian immigrant, that sentence probably sounds very familiar. And we do want to recognize that it comes from a place of love. But at the same time, there is just this tremendous pressure for us to succeed. So you study hard, you work hard, you're always trying to achieve. And a lot of Asian kids actually do really well in their life. But at some point, maybe one late night when you're finishing up your work, you just start to wonder, if I'm really doing so well, why am I just not feeling happy? Why do I have this constant feeling of anxiety, of guilt, of emptiness inside? And that is the hidden mental health story of so many young Asian immigrants, whether it's because your parents are moving from another country to the US, or you move here alone when you were young. It's just the hurt, the ugly part beneath the success, the beautiful outside. And it's the other side of model minority. Now let's go back to the beginning of this video when I say, I sacrificed everything for you. This is very real. A lot of us have heard that from our parents. I did everything for you. You should know that I only consider your good. I watch out for you, and all of that. And what did you feel when you hear that? If we ask ourselves, a lot of time we feel this pressure to do whatever this person is telling us to do, right? So we succeed, we achieve, we get all A's. But at some point, we won't be able to keep up all the expectations that our parents have for us. And then what? Then we fail. And this failure triggers a guilt feeling inside of us. And no one likes to feel guilty or something, right? So we try hard to get rid of that guilt by doing what our parents tell us to do. And that just creates a cycle. And I want to give you one of my personal example. When I was in college, my original plan was I was on a pre-med track as a neuroscience major, and I wanted to be a doctor at that time. I wanted to be a neurosurgeon or a pediatrician maybe. But at some point during the second year of my college life, I discovered my passion for sports. So I was really, really into sports. All I wanted to do at that time was to be a professional boxer and maybe having some flexible job on the side. My parents were so angry at me when I heard that. They kept reminding me that you forgot about your dream. You were so determined to be a doctor. And I just remember that night I was in my dorm and I was messaging them on WeChat and I was crying. I was crying because I didn't forget my dream. But at some point, it becomes their dream because they like the idea of me becoming a doctor. So they become deeply, deeply attached to that dream. So that was a really difficult time. And during COVID time, I got a chance of reading a book called Emotional Blackmailing by Susan Forward. And Susan Forward talked about exactly what I felt. And I believe a lot of us felt in this kind of situation. She defined emotional blackmailing as a manipulative tactic that exploits the victim's F.O.G. And what F.O.G. stands for is F, fear, O, obligation, and G, guilt. She explained that it makes the victim feel like you're trapped in this fear of losing someone that you love if you don't do what they ask you to do, and you feel obligated to do what they ask for you to do because they talked about, I sacrifice everything for you. And if you can't meet that expectation, then you start to feel guilt. And that guilt making you more susceptible to perform another round of being manipulated. So you see the cycle goes on and on. Emotional blackmailing, or a more common term, emotional manipulation, does not only happen in Asian country. Of course, I see that in almost all my clients, no matter black or white, Latina, Asian, I don't care who you are. But in Asian culture, there is an added layer to that. It's called filial piety. This is Confucianism, right? Filial piety is something that's integrated in our culture. It means you have to respect people who are older than you, act obedient, and devote yourself to your parents or to people who are older in your family. And when this culture value is so rooted in the environment you grow up in, you start to live and breathe it. You stop challenging it. And all you can think about is, I need to listen to my parents. And if I don't do what they said, then I'm a bad child. And it does create a lot of problem. So for my parents, Now they are retired, they're in their 50s. They have the obligation to take care of their parents. That is not a fun job because a lot of these grandparents also have their childhood trauma. So they are unhappy. When you have to be a adult child trying to take care of an elderly parent who had a lot of trauma and mental health distress, is just a huge stress for you too. But it is hard to break out of this cycle. As an Asian culture, it is collectivistic, meaning the family always comes first. You as a person comes later than the family. And here is where it gets more complicated for children of immigrants. The sense of duty starts really, really early in your life. I have a lot of clients, they are children of immigrant family. They told me early on they started to become the interpreter of the family. And think about it, it's very awkward as a kid being caught to a teacher-parent meeting, have to sit in between your parents and teacher and help them translate to the language each other understand. It just feels like a lot of pressure and a lot of stress, right? And the simple act of translating in between language is more than what it seems. It seems like, okay, you're just being the interpreter of your family, like that's natural. But what it translates to is you also have to consider each other's feeling. The word's gonna come out of you. So you have to consider each person's feeling when you're translating. And that implies in life in general, children of immigrants have to be the emotional caretaker of their parents a lot of time. And even if we don't consider all these translating things, a lot of time being obedient, being a good kid, or in Chinese we have a term called 懂事, which means understanding things. That means you don't cause burden to your parents. You don't add emotional stress to them. And that means you have to absorb and digest your own stress, your own discomfort. And I'm not saying that to blame any parents. I think we do need to understand that a lot of time immigrant parents are busy trying to make money, trying to support a family. The emotional needs is not something they can keep up with anymore because they are devoted 90% of their energy to support the financial aspect of the family. So it is just something that we want to recognize. It's not something that we use to blame. And while the children of immigrants are translating, taking care of their parents, they also face the task of understanding who they are, who they want to be. This is a critical stage of every human being's life. It's called identity confusion versus identity formation. So it's a task of figuring out who you are. Tell me about who you are. And for a children of an immigrant, it's really hard to tell who you are. You're living in between the two cultures. You speak different language inside a household, outside a household. You have different culture inside your household, outside of your household. And the result is you're not American enough, but at the same time, you're not Asian enough. My parents are not immigrants, so I am the first one who started living here when I was 18. But even coming here so late, absorbing all the Western education, when I got home, I started to use the American way, the critical thinking, what I learned in college to talk to my parents. And what my dad replied to me is, do not use your American way to speak to me. That's just a simple example of a million more examples that other people can give you as kids of immigrants or as people like me. And I also have another client who told me her dad complained to her that she cannot make an authentic home food anymore. But at the same time, none of us are American enough either. Let's face this reality. American culture really emphasizes on individuality, living your dream, the American dream, whatever it is. However, the Asian society really, really focuses on what you're doing for your family, the collectivistic aspect. So when you are considering what should I major in college, what do I want to do in my life? Should I listen to my family or should I follow my own dream? And it's a tough decision. I think for me, when I look back at my reconciliation with my parents, I recognize that the reason we were finally able to understand each other was also because I stopped being stubborn. I stopped wanting to solely be an athlete. I gave up a part of that dream and I'm still doing sports, but in a way that they can accept. And in my early 20s, I did have the opportunity to be a professional athlete. But during those years, I feel like personally I challenged myself a lot. I learned a lot. I was super proud of myself to be able to do that. But looking back, thinking about all the family conflict, all the sadness, all the grief, all the not getting supported by the family that I'd experienced is just really, really hard, that I do not want to relive that. And when you carry all these, the guilt, the expectation of parents, the parentification part, and the role confusion, all of these contribute to mental health problems. But statistics shows that although the pain is real, not a lot of us reaching out to get help. So I'm gonna give you some of the data. About 1 in 3 Asian American adults report significant psychological distress, but less than 25% of those who struggle ever receive mental health care, and that's half the rate compared to white Americans. Only 8.6% of Asian Americans have ever thought therapy in their lifetime. And when I was in grad school, I tried to research how common is mental health problem for Asian immigrants or international students. I found the number is surprisingly low, which is very, very different from what I see, what I hear, what I observe. Right? It feels like the research world and reality is so different. So I started to ask the question, why? Why is it that everyone around me is complaining about mental health problems? However, the research shows the other way. Well, if you look at these people who complain about mental health problem, most of them do not go to see therapy, do not seek help. They try to be tough. They either try to be tough or they got to the point that, okay, I cannot manage it anymore. And a lot of time they have to take a break from school. They have to go back to China to live with their parents for a while. And speaking of the perspective of the therapist, other part of it is the DSM-5 diagnosis. So DSM-5 is the thick blue book that talking about all the criteria to meet a mental health diagnosis. In all the mental health diagnosis, in the last category of diagnostic criteria, it will say the symptom must be severe enough that it disrupts your daily function. And looking back of my experience when I was in college, if you were looking from an external perspective, I don't think you will see any disruption of my daily function. On the surface level, I'm still a good student. I still achieve academically. I'm doing sports. I'm doing everything I can. But inside, I'm having a lot of somatic problems. I'm struggling a lot. So a lot of us as Asian immigrants or kids of Asian immigrants, we are high functional, which means that you have some self-discipline, you have some way to mask your real mental health problem. That's why I think mental health problems are really underdiagnosed in Asian population. And even for people who understand that they need to go to therapy and they know what they want to talk about in therapy, they are still hesitant to go. And why is that? It's because going back to this guilt, this feeling of I need to save face, I need to protect the beautifulness of my family, right? I remember I have seen a lot of clients who told me about what their parents do are really hurting them. At the same time, they will reassure me or they will reassure themselves that, our parents are really doing the best because what my mom's mom did to her is worse than what my mom did to me. This reassurance just reflects that inside, although we're trying to blame them, we are also trying to love them. We are also trying to find excuse for them. But here's the truth. Recognizing your pain does not mean you're pointing your finger at your parents. It simply means that you are seeing your pain and you decide to carry it on in a different way. Instead of guilt, you have way more compassion. And no matter what kind of problem you have, we all need social support, meaning we all need someone to see us recognize the pain that we carried and tell us it really sucks, or tell us that I got you back. You can tell me, you can cry to me, you can tell me whatever you think. I will embrace that. And that's the start of healing. You're able to understand yourself. You're able to understand, where does all my mental health problems start? Where's the root of it? You're able to name it, talking about parentification, talking about identity confusion. And once you see the root of the problem, where it all starts, then you have the ability to decide what you want to keep and what you want to leave. It is up to us to reparent ourselves and to have a good adult life. And I want to end this video with a story of my first time being in therapy when I was 19. That was a time when I was really stressed out because I really want to do martial arts, but my parents just want me to go to a medical school. I went to see a therapist, and in the last minute, he asked me, "Are you happy doing what you're doing right now?" And I said, "Yes, I'm perfectly happy. This is my dream since I was a kid. I'm living my dream." And then he asked me, do you think your parents want you to be happy? And I said, of course my parents want me to be happy, but they're not happy with me doing this thing that make me happy. And he talked about a lot of time parents are worried about the decision we're making at this moment will lead us in the future to have some misfortune, to be unhappy, to not be able to live a comfortable life. And that's why they tell us, no, get away from this path, because they think this path leads to failure, leads to sadness. And what you can do is have the confidence in yourself and show them that I can always be happy doing my thing. So at some point in the future, they're going to look back and recognize, okay, I raised up this girl who always know what's best for her, and she stick up to her dream. And now look at her. She's happy and she's successful in her own way. This is the first time our parents becoming parents. They also have a lot to learn. They also make a lot of mistakes. You can understand that, and the rest is your own work. If you like this video, feel free to comment below. Tell me about your story or any question, mental health related or not mental health related, you have for me. And I love to read all the comments, and I will see you next time in a video.